Uh, Thank you very much, Tomeu, for inviting me to share with you this afternoon in Boston, here late evening in Spain. So the topic of this meeting or talk or lecture, whatever you like to call it, it is the conversions of Ignatius of Loyola. Well, when my first approach to the conversion of Ignatius Loyola was not a theological one, was not a historical one, was not a spiritual or mystical one, but my first approach to Ignatius of Loyola conversion was a philological one, a linguistic one. So I started going to study the word conversion. And, conversion not in 21st century, but conversion in 16th century. So trying to understand what Ignatius maybe understood about his own process of inner transformation, starting maybe not in Loyola in 1521st, but maybe 4 years later in 1517. What happened at Ignatius at that time? Well, we will see a few minutes later. But I try to understand what Ignatius understood about his process transforming inner spiritual, mystical, Christological process. And well, not only in Ignatius, because we don't have not a word from Ignatius himself about his own transformation. We don't have just one word. Where in this book called Autobiography, the word autobiography appears in Spanish in maybe at the end of 19th century. So the first Jesuits were never thinking in the text from Father Camara, written between 53 and 55. They were never thinking about that book as a autobiography, as we think now in that, And conversion. So my first step was to check in this wonderful book published by the Institute of Jesuit Sources and Communication, Loyola Press here in Spain, is the concordance, Ignatian concordance. What is it? It is the list of the words that appears in all the Ignatian writings, well, except for the letters, because 12 volumes of letters. But if you go to the word conversion, well, I was really, it was really, conversion. The word conversion appears just one time. If you go for another words and you look here, for example, for the word ayuda, means to help the souls, you can find few pages of different references to ayuda or to love or to serve. But if you search here, the word conversion only appear one time in exercises 282, when Ignatius is talking about the conversion of Mary Magdalene, in the Vita Christi Mysteria, in the spiritual exercises. So I started to suspect that when we are talking about conversion, we are referring to very different things that the Ignatius maybe thought about himself. Well, but not only Ignatius. I continue my second step. If the autobiography, sometimes I say to my student, it is not auto, it is not bio, it is not graphy. So what is it? So if the autobiography never speaks about conversion, because the word doesn't appear, let's check another first of the Ignatian lives in the Ignatian context, So then we have to go to what? We have to go to this book. It is in this book from we find the first biography about Ignatius Loyola written in 1547. So Ignatius was still alive, died in 56. So 9 years before Ignatius passed away, Father Lainez, a very close friend of Ignatius, wrote a very long letter to Father Polanco, who was in Rome. If you read this biography, you will never find the word conversion. So Lainez started to talk about the inner process of Ignatian's transformation, or in Latin, the word used is mutatio. In Spanish, we also use mutación or mudanza. That means to move from one place to another place. But Lainez didn't want to use the word conversion. So I don't want to bore you with this, but for example, if we take the life of Rivadeneira, the official life written in Spanish in 1582 or 1583, Rivadeneira never speaks about conversion. No. In Latin, yes, he used the word conversion. And the wonderful edition that we have published by the Institute of Jesuit Sources, that is an edition taken from the Latin text of Peter of Rivadeneira, of course, translate conversion Latin from conversion in English, okay? But the Spanish text, when Rivadeneira has to translate his own text from Latin into Spanish, Castilian, oh my God, he also avoids the word conversion. And then what if we try to Polanco? You know, Polanco was the secretary of Ignatius for 9 years, from 47 to 56, and was in charge of letters and bureaucracy and administration. And Polanco wrote in 74 a beautiful, beautiful life of Ignatius Loyola, first published in another language different from Latin a year ago. And the same thing. The word conversion, it doesn't appear. So no camera in the autobiography. So no Polanco in the life of Father Ignatius. So no Rivadeneira. So what's going on here? Well, why this word doesn't appear in the first writings of the first Jesuit? Maybe for two reasons. But first, then, are we celebrating this year, right? Or it's a huge mistake? No, it is right. It is right. What does it mean? That means that from a 21st century theologian or believer, or for a 21st century follower of Jesus Christ, we look at this transformation of Ignatius, and from what we understood from conversion, we apply this to Loyola in Spain in 1521, and we recognize that, Ignatius moved from one place, soul mystical place, to another place. So, and for us, this is a conversion, But for the first Jesuit, it was not a conversion. Why? Well, I was thinking about before connecting this afternoon with you and Tomeo, I was thinking yesterday, the days before, and maybe for two reasons. One is biblical reasons. You know, from a New Testament perspective, the process of conversion was really directly connected to two persons. One is Saint Paul of Tarso. This is the stereotype of a conversion from Judaism into a follower of Jesus. And what happened to Paul? For the theologians in 16th century, it was a process of conversion. But what Ignatius was living in Loyola was not at all similar to what happened to Paul in his way to Damascus. So they didn't want to identify Paul with Ignatius. So if the really converted one was Saint Paul, so if Ignatius went through something different, we cannot use the same word to identify these two big men in the church, in the history of the church. And the second character person is Mary the Magdalene. Well, in the first dictionaries of Spanish, Castilian, in the 17th, first dictionaries goes back to 1611, is the very serious first dictionary of Spanish that we preserve. When using the definition of trying to offer a definition of conversion, this author, Sebastian de Covarrubias, refers to Mary Magdalene. Okay, so Mary Magdalene, yes, she really suffered in a way, went through a process of conversion. But what happened to Ignatius was not the same that happened to Mary Magdalene. So we cannot identify both processes with the same words. So different words for different things. So, but the first reason is biblical New Testament reason. Which is the second one? The second one is is related to one of the most painful situations inside the Catholic Church in Europe in end of 15th and 16th century. It was a problem, a conflict, very related to the Jews community. So, you know, the conversos, in Spanish, converso was, has had a very deep echo to the process and to the change that people from Judaism moved from Judaism into Christianity. So it was not a good thing in 16th century to be a Jews converted. It was not a very good thing to recognize that your father or your grandparent or your ancestor were Jews and you were a converted one, you know. Well, when Father Lainez was elected second Father General, everybody knew that Lainez's father had been converted from Judaism into Christianity, so into Christian new life, and there was a huge scandal. It was a huge scandal. So the first Jesuits, they tried to avoid the word conversion to refer to Ignatius of Loyola. In any way, in any situation, we should, the first Jesuit think like that, maybe. We have to try to separate the spiritual or mystical process of our Father from any possible echo of maybe conversion. So that is my first point I would like to share with you, that it is just something historical. Well, yes, it's something historical, but as we are celebrating the conversion of St. Ignatius, we should think before that maybe never Ignatius thought in his own process as a process of conversion. No, the very first Jesuits, of course, maybe for these two reasons. Okay, so if we are not talking about conversion, what are we talking about? I don't know. I don't know. Maybe, well, I told you that maybe the most common or used words in Spanish to refer to that are mutatio or mutación or mudanza, moving from a place to another place. Well, in my paper, in my written pages here, I have referred to that as a transformation. What happened to Ignatius, yes, was a process of transformation. So, and as Tomeu was introducing us here, is that it was a very quite long process and complex process. And in this itinerary, well, we can find different levels and of transformations. The dimension of the interiority of Ignatius was in permanent change. I mean, moving completely, even though when he's in Rome, maybe in the highest point of his mystical life, as we know, for example, for the spiritual diary, 2nd February 1544 to 27 February 1545. I mean, 13 months of mystical life. So even though in this period of his life, Ignatius, as many of us, as all of us, was in permanent conversion, inner transformation. So, in my opinion, with all the elements, the different conversions Ignatius went through, I mean, maybe 30 years or 35 years, maybe at the end of his life, he could understand the inner logic of every piece of the puzzle. I mean, different elements on the table that synchronically, the moment he was living this, for example, in Jerusalem in 1523, or in La Storta in 1537, the different elements may be disconnected, but every element was implying a new invitations to transformation. Well, we could say a new conversion in our terminology in contemporary terms. Yeah, but in my opinion, Ignatius was only at the very end of his life able to understand the whole process and the inner logical movement of the Holy Spirit inside him. So if you read the autobiography, autobiography, you read that. Well, you can read it in a different levels, no? Historically or culturally, sociologically, I mean, mystically, I mean, but once you try to enter into the heart of the pilgrim, you know that the first Jesuits, they never referred to Ignatius as a pilgrim. Only Camara, but it's okay. It is for another lecture, another day. I mean, Ignatius was able to understand what had been happening inside him for 34 years. In my opinion, only at the end. Oh, God was here. And I didn't realize at that moment, oh, God was talking to me there in that way, but I couldn't connect that with that, okay? For example, Cardinal Experience. Cardinal Experience may be one of the highest mystical peak experience of Ignatius of Loyola, but I'm sure that Ignatius could not understand anything in 1522 at the Cardinal River shore, no? But he has just kept the experience inside in his heart, as Mary used to do, no? Keep the experience inside. And maybe 25 years later, he understood the meaning of this very high, very deep experience, no? So, yeah, with this very long preamble, but it is most important things, I think, related to conversions. Could we say something about the main elements of this chain of conversions? Yeah, okay. Just a couple of minutes to each of them, because every element here, yeah, could be for us, apart for a seminar or for a, yeah, but first of all, you remember the first words of the autobiography. Up to the age of 26, Ignatius was given to the vanity of the world, blah, 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 to the 26. So, but the battle in Pamplona against the French military troops in Pamplona took place in 1521, 500 years ago. And if we recognize Polanco was not at all sure of that, but if we recognize that Ignatius was born in 1491, Ignatius was 30 years old during the Battle of Pamplona, okay? Was born in 1491, and the battle took place in 1521. What does it mean? That Ignatius was 30 years old. But the autobiography refers to the age of 26. So we have to move back 4 years in the life of Ignatius Loyola. And then we have to ask, as historians, no, where was Ignatius in 1517 and what happened with his life? So in 1517, Ignatius was pushed away from the castle on the palace of Arevalo because Germana de Foix, the second wife of the King Ferdinand of Aragon, took the power of the palace and then pushed away John Velázquez de Cuellar and all his team, we could say today, you know. And Ignatius was there, and Ignatius was pushed away of the palace. Okay, I don't want you anymore here. You were invited by Velázquez de Cuellar, who was very close friend of the Loyola family, but okay, I don't want you here. 1517. In my opinion, well, following the opinion of Father Ricardo García Villoslada, historian of Ignatius' life, in my opinion, it was the very first conversion of Ignatius. Ignatius at that time was 26 years old. You know, boys used to get married when they were 16, 17. Ignatius was 26 years old. He was very deeply in love of a woman in the court. We don't know the name of this woman, but maybe this very hard experience, what I'm going to do with my life now, I am 26, I have to move, start again. Maybe we could find that the first conversion of Ignatius. This was a metaphysical, philosophical conversion. Conversion to what? Conversion to life. Conversion to, that life is a very serious thing. You know, that life is not a game, that, you know, the time is something, an opportunity that will never come back to my life. And in my opinion, with 26 years old, Ignatius ran away, went away from Arevalo Palace, maybe thinking all these things. Well, I have been enjoying the vanities of the lives here, and now for what? What is the meaning of my life? In my opinion, this is the first conversion of Ignatius, that may be the one that the autobiography refers just 4 years before the one that happened in Loyola. No? But this conversion, this very first conversion, established the main fundament, the principle and foundation for the second conversion that really took place in Loyola. Well, what happened in Loyola was a transformation, not philosophical one, but a religious one. What's the difference? What is the difference? Well, maybe the philosophical, metaphysical conversion invite us to answer this question: how I could be a better person? It's enough. Well, it's a very deep question. But maybe Ignatius was thinking in these terms: okay, I'm 26, I'm maybe full of problems here. I don't know, my future is very uncertain. What can I do? Well, maybe a good question is here: who can I be a better person? Maybe who can I use my life to help others? I don't know how, I don't know. But the religious conversion offer us the possibility to answer a different question. What is God expecting from me? And how can I build up my life trying to do with my life an answer to God's will? This is a different question. The first one, metaphysical, philosophical, must be horizontal, no? Immanent question, and it is demanding an immanent answer. But the second one is a transcendent question, is waiting, is expecting a religious and a transcendent answer. No, so this was then, in my opinion, we could say that what we are celebrating today is the experience of the second step in this process of permanent conversion in Ignatius of Loyola. So Ignatius, maybe for first time in his life, felt. We are celebrating the 500 years of a feeling, of experience. Ignatius was a pious and devout man. When he was fighting in Pamplona, he asked for confession, and maybe he used to pray during his convalescence, traditional prayers, vocal prayers. But what we are celebrating here is the history of a feeling that for Ignatius was the Ignatian hermeneutics of this feeling was a word from God. So, and maybe Ignatius was feeling that for the very first time in his life. So, and this was really a transformation. Ignatius could not be the same before having felt God in this way. The word consolation, maybe that for us, Ignatian family, Jesuit, blah, 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 the word consolation, we are very used to that. But maybe Ignatius could never use this word in 1521 while he was in bed recovering from his cannonball in his leg. No, but he starts to talk about joy, alegria, joy. Maybe he could use today happiness. We don't know. But okay, Ignatius converted from a pious traditional relationship to God to a very personal, deep experience of God. This was the second step. But time runs, eh? Time goes very fast. Okay. You know what happened? Everything started with this, reading a book. I have here the book. I have here the photocopy of the book that Ignatius maybe was reading in his convalescence in Loyola. The Vita Christi of Ludolf of Saxony is a huge book. Did you know this? And well, I will show you now this. This is the photocopy of a book printed in Alcalá de Henares in 1503. It is preserved in Loyola. And I brought it from Chile. This copy was in Chile. I got the permission, of course, of my superiors to bring it here. But everything started from a reading, and reading. reading, then imagining, desire, then desire, proposals, then determinatios, and then decision, and then actions. But everything starting reading. It's something magic inside Ignatius. Ignatius started reading, just reading. It was enough to read. But in a moment, the autobiography says, but when he reached a moment in when he was tired, he used to close the book, and then physically the book was closed, but inside his heart, mind, and memory and fantasy, the book remained open. Oh, this was a miracle. Literally a miracle, because we as believers, we are very sure that that the Holy Spirit entered through this open window of Ignatius in his memory and fantasy, and from that started to wake up a desire, and from the desire a proposal, and then a decision, and then an action to go to Jerusalem. Okay, we could talk very, very long about this second step, but just few seconds for the next third step. You know, the third step of conversion of Ignatius took place maybe 21 or 22 months after that. It was what happened, his crisis in Jerusalem. Well, what happened in Jerusalem? Oh, for Ignatius, I'm sure that it was maybe a deeper crisis than even what he has experienced in Loyola 2 years ago. It took almost 2 years to reach Jerusalem, Jaffa, Venice, then Chipre, then Jaffa, then Jerusalem. And he stayed in Jerusalem only for 20 days, only 20 days, 20 days. But how is it possible? It took me 2 years to come here. And now the provincial of the Franciscans is pushing me literally away from Holy Land. But Ignatius maybe realized that his personal discernment of his own feelings, even those of consolation, the final interpretation of that was maybe wrong. How it was possible? Ignatius traveled to Jerusalem trusting 100% in the inner feeling that God really wanted him in Jerusalem. But you know, if you read the autobiography, paragraph 50, if you go to paragraph 50, it is the first time that we find the expression, the will of God. The will of God. And then before, which will was Ignatius following? I mean, he was following many times his will, his proposal, his desire, his determination. And the author of the autobiography knew that. And because of that, how to reconcile the will of Ignatius and the will of the church in Jerusalem, because this is the will of the church who pushed Ignatius away from Jerusalem. How to reconcile that? I mean, the author of the autobiography has to recognize that it was not God's will, that it was Ignatius' will. Well, so if you read the autobiography and you underline the word his, in Spanish, su means his, her will, his determination, his proposal. And then this was the third step in the conversion of Ignatius of Loyola, the conversion to the church. What does it mean? That means that Ignatius, from this very first moment, had to incorporate, to welcome the third element in his personal discernment. And he will write down after that in the rules for thinking with the church that close the spiritual exercises, no? The last set of rules, the rule thinking or feeling with the church. And so Ignatius had to incorporate in his personal communal discernment, me, my will, God, God's will. Oh, listen, church will, okay? So we could talk long about it too, but it's enough. Just a couple of minutes to the fourth step of his process of transformation. You know, it took 2 months traveling from Jerusalem, going back to Barcelona, back, Chipre, Jaffa, Chipre, Venice, Barcelona. And in 1524, Ignatius is back to Barcelona. And it took maybe 3 months in 3 months, maybe Ignatius was thinking, Ignatius was, very scrupulous person, maybe many times thinking about, and he was thinking maybe in these terms, I don't know, but maybe in these terms, 20 days in Jerusalem, in Holy Land, maybe was enough for him to realize that in every place that he wanted to meet Jesus, Jesus was never alone. In my opinion, the failure of Jerusalem invited Ignatius to transform his vocation that he wanted to live alone in direct contact with God through Jesus Christ. For Ignatius at the beginning, to follow Jesus, it was a question of me and him and me, Jesus, me, Jesus, and then the church. And church means the community. But maybe Ignatius was thinking in these terms, oh, Jesus was not alone. Jesus was always surrounded by a group of disciples. If I really want to follow Jesus, should I find some companions? I mean, this is the fourth element in the process of transformation of Ignatius, coming from maybe from the experience in Jerusalem. So Ignatius in Barcelona, Alcalá, and Salamanca started to try to build up a community, friends in the Lord. Maybe later it was appeared in a letter of 2nd February 1544, 35. But yeah, you know, the Spirit was working and working and working, and pedagogically, I mean that the Holy Spirit never tell us so many things at the same time that we could not understand. No, just slowly, no? First, second, third. And when we read the life of Ignatius, from this pedagogical perspective of the Holy Spirit, we should agree, Father Nadal, who said that it was softly led by the Holy Spirit, never trying to take him over, no, but always following the Spirit, no? Well, this is the fourth element. Maybe it was in the process of Ignatius, was a conversion to societas, Society of Jesus, Compañía de Jesús, okay? To follow Jesus Christ implies to share my life with others, no? So, and as you know, well, it was in Paris in 1534 with the liturgy in Montmartre, when the first companions, they closed the process together and say, okay, we will try to go to Jerusalem. If not, we will go to Rome, to the Pope, blah, 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 all this. But this was the fourth element in the conversion of Ignatius, no? Okay. I have still 3 more minutes just to share something about, well, we could be the last deep element, because the first conversion, I could refer the first conversion to the Father. The second, third element of the process could be referred to the Son, be part of the way of Jesus and be close to Jesus in La Storta, and praying to Mary put me close to Christ, okay? But at the end is the transformation in the Holy Spirit, And if you have done the spiritual exercises, maybe you are familiarized with the last exercise of Ignatius, that Ignatius offers us in this method, is the contemplation to attain love. For many theologians, this contemplation or meditation is the pneumatological element, the spiritual element, where the Holy Spirit is more specifically but not explicitly present in the spiritual exercises. So what is this conversion about? This conversion is about world. It is about history. It is a conversion about things, about nature, about creation, about the others. I mean, but it was only for me, it was possible for Ignatius to discover the historical presence of the Holy Spirit in the world just after having been touched by so many other elements before. I mean, the contemplation to attain love opened us to discover God in all things. Well, it is very simple and very easy to say, but maybe a quite more difficult and complex to experience. what is it about? You know, this is why the Society of Jesus, and well, I am talking now as a Jesuit, and all that people around the Ignatian spirituality, we are a worldly spirituality. We discover God looking down. I don't know if even more than looking to heaven. I don't know if more, but at least at the same level. So all commitment with Jesuit and Ignatian ministries, all commitment with history, with justice, with faith, with ecology, with the neighbor, with political, all related to these historical and worldly dimensions in our daily life, are for us spiritual experiences. So we are experiencing God in our daily life, in our daily boring work, in this quite boring talk with you now, but we could think in that as a religious experience, because we are sure as contemplation to attain love that the Holy Spirit works and dwells in everything. No? For me, this is the main goal of all this Ignatian transformation, and it was an experience in him. So the invitation of the spiritual exercises, inviting us to live this life, this pneumatological life, is inspired and supported by all the Ignatian previous process. Okay. So I started this talk saying that, sharing with you that conversion was a long and a complex process. I mean, for me, for me and for any of us, it's difficult to just to summarize this in 35 or 40 minutes, but enough. If after this we realize how deep, complex, and long was the inner transformation of Ignatius of Loyola, inviting us maybe to follow this way, that's okay. Thank you very much.